The royal arena of Argenia was filled with light, sound, and fear. Thousands of citizens had gathered to see the next queen's trial, the ceremony that would prove who was worthy to rule the kingdom. Giant screens floated in the air, showing every movement inside the arena. In the center stood Princess Lyra, daughter of Queen Seraphine, her armor shining but her hands trembling. The people whispered. They did not believe in her strength. They said she was too soft, too quiet, too weak to lead a kingdom built on power and war. High above, the queen sat on her golden throne, her face cold and unreadable. To her right stood Prince Chiron, Lyra's cousin and rival, the perfect warrior, confident and cruel. He had already passed his trial with glory, defeating 10 opponents alone. Now he smiled, waiting for Lyra to fail. The sound of drums filled the air. The royal commander shouted, "Begin the trial!" Lyra took a deep breath and raised her sword. The energy around her crackled, forming bright blue lines across the arena floor. Her opponent, a mechanical knight powered by ancient technology, stepped forward. Its armor glowed red, its eyes burning like fire. Lyra's heart raced, but she tried to remember her training. Focus, control. Do not let fear rule you, the knight charged. Metal crashed against metal as their blades met. Sparks flew. Lyra pushed with all her strength, but the machine was stronger. It swung again, and her sword almost slipped from her hand. The crowd gasped. Somewhere in the stands, Chiron laughed softly. Lyra tried to call on her hidden power, the royal energy known as ether light, passed down through generations. But her light flickered and died. Panic filled her eyes. The knight struck again, and this time her sword shattered into pieces. She fell to her knees as the machine raised its blade for the final blow. "Stop," the queen commanded. The knight froze. Silence filled the arena. Lyra's breathing was heavy, her face pale with shame. Her mother stood slowly, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "You have failed the trial of the crown." The people began to whisper louder now. "She's not ready. She's weak. The queen's daughter is a failure." The words cut deeper than any sword. Lyra looked up at her mother, hoping for a sign of comfort. A word, a smile, anything. But the queen turned her gaze away. That silence hurt more than all the noise. Only one person in the entire arena did not look at Lyra with disappointment. Captain Aaron, a quiet soldier from the Royal Guard. He had served in many wars, and he had seen true courage before. As the others mocked her, he saw something different. Not weakness, but pain. And inside that pain, a spark of something powerful, something waiting to awaken. After the trial, Lyra walked through the palace halls alone. The walls felt colder than ever. She could still hear the laughter echoing in her mind. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. In her private chamber, she threw her broken sword aside and stared out the window. The city lights of Argenia glowed below, bright, perfect, and distant. She felt small in front of them. "How can I be her daughter," she whispered to herself, "if I can't even hold a sword?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. The royal AI orb, a floating machine named Sol, entered quietly, glowing with blue light. "Princess, your vitals show emotional distress."
"Shall I inform the queen?"
Lyra shook her head. "No, she doesn't want to see me." Sol paused. "Failure is part of human growth." Lyra sighed bitterly. "Then why does it feel like the end?" She didn't know that somewhere beneath the palace, deep below the throne room, something ancient was stirring. A pulse of energy, faint but growing, echoed from the earth. The walls vibrated for a moment, almost like a heartbeat. The lights flickered and Sol blinked. "Energy fluctuation detected," the AI said. "Unidentified source." Lyra didn't notice. She was staring at the mark glowing faintly on her wrist, a strange symbol she had never seen before. It pulsed softly, almost alive. For a moment she felt warmth and fear at the same time. Then it faded. Outside her chamber, Captain Aaron stood guard, hearing everything. When he saw the energy reading on his wrist device spike, he frowned. What was that? He thought. That wasn't ordinary power. In the silence of the night, a distant voice, soft and ancient, whispered through the walls, so quietly that only Lyra could hear it. "Daughter of the Queen, the world will call you a failure, but I call you something else. The beginning." The voice faded and Lyra opened her eyes wide. She looked out at the city again, the storm clouds gathering over the palace towers. Somewhere deep inside her heart, something had changed. The fire she thought had died was now flickering once more, weak, small, but alive. and as the thunder rolled across Argenia, Captain Aaron watched from the shadows and whispered to himself, "She doesn't know it yet." But the war just found its warrior. Night had fallen over the shining city of Argenia. The towers of the royal palace glowed like silver under the moonlight, but inside its walls Princess Lyra couldn't sleep. Her failure at the trial replayed again and again in her mind. Every whisper of failure echoed through the corridors like a curse. She sat alone in her dark chamber, her hand resting on the strange mark glowing faintly on her wrist. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat, but it wasn't hers. Lyra stood and opened the curtains. The night sky was full of quiet stars, yet one of them blinked brighter than the rest. A strange blue light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the mark on her wrist. She frowned. Was it a coincidence or a call? Her AI companion Saul hovered near her shoulder. "Princess," it said in its calm, robotic voice, "your energy readings are unusual. Would you like me to alert the palace science team?" "No," Lyra whispered quickly. "Don't tell anyone." She didn't trust them anymore, not the advisors, not the scientists, not even the queen. If they found out about this mark, they might lock her away like they did with the other unstable heirs. She needed answers on her own. Silently, she wrapped her cloak around her and left her room. The guards outside were distracted by the sound of music from the Queen's Hall, a celebration for Chiron's victory. No one noticed the princess slipping into the shadows. Lyra made her way to the royal archives, a forbidden place after midnight. The long corridors were filled with ancient statues of the first rulers of Argenia. Their cold eyes seemed to follow her as she passed. The air smelled of dust and secrets. When she entered the archives, the doors closed with a low hum. Endless rows of holographic scrolls floated in the air. She whispered, "Show me the records of the first queen." The system hesitated. "Access restricted." Lyra pressed her wrist to the scanner. The mark on her skin glowed brighter and then the system beeped. "Access granted," it said. A wall opened, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside was a single ancient tablet covered in golden light. Lyra stepped closer. The writing on it shimmered, rearranging itself into words she could understand. "When the blood of the first queen stirs again, the light will awaken beneath the crown. She will be called a failure, yet she will rise as the blade that cuts through shadow." Her heart pounded. Was this about me? She thought. The mark on her wrist glowed in response, brighter, stronger. The ground beneath her feet trembled slightly and a faint hum filled the air. Suddenly, Sul's voice broke the silence. "Warning. Unidentified energy detected. Location, Archive Vault Delta." Then came the metallic footsteps. Royal guards, armored and cold, entered the hall. "By order of the Queen, Princess Lyra, you are under arrest for unauthorized entry and power activation." Lyra stepped back. "No. Wait, I can explain." But they didn't listen. They raised their weapons, glowing with electric energy. Before they could strike, a voice shouted from behind them.
Stand down.
It was Captain Aaron. His blade hummed as he blocked their path. "She's with me," he said sharply. The guards hesitated. "Captain, the Queen's orders. I'll take responsibility," Aaron interrupted. "Leave." After a tense pause, the guards lowered their weapons and retreated. When the doors closed again, Lyra turned to him, breathing fast. "Why did you help me?" Aaron looked at her calmly. "Because the palace doesn't punish mistakes and it hides the truth behind them. I saw what happened in the arena. That light you tried to control, it wasn't weakness. It was something else." Lyra stared at him, surprised. "You saw it too?" He nodded. "And I think the Queen knows more than she tells you." They moved quickly through the tunnels beneath the archives. Aaron led her through maintenance corridors filled with steam and flickering lights. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe," he said. "The palace sensors won't reach this far down." As they walked, Lyra felt the mark on her wrist burning hotter. The faint voice she heard last night whispered again, clearer this time. "Daughter of the Queen, the light beneath will guide you. Follow it." Suddenly, the ground rumbled violently. A piece of the tunnel wall cracked open, revealing a hidden door covered in strange symbols the same as her mark. The door opened by itself, releasing a soft blue light that filled the corridor. Aaron stepped back, shielding his eyes. "What is this?" Lyra stared into the light. "I don't know, but it feels like it's calling me." They stepped inside. The room was circular, filled with floating crystals and ancient technology humming with power. In the center was a small sphere glowing like a heartbeat. The moment Lyra touched it, visions flashed before her eyes, a burning city, soldiers of light, and a woman who looked like her, but older, stronger, wearing shining armor. The vision faded. Lyra gasped, falling to her knees. The mark on her wrist now shone like fire. Sol's voice buzzed again from her cloak. Princess, power output beyond safe levels. You must stop, but Lyra didn't stop. She whispered, almost in a trance, This is the power they feared. Aaron knelt beside her. Lyra, we need to go. The palace will detect this. Before they could move, the ceiling lights flickered red. A mechanical voice echoed through the tunnels. Unauthorized signal detected. All units respond. Aaron grabbed her hand. Run! They sprinted through the tunnels as alarms screamed above. Behind them, heavy footsteps echoed. The Queen's guards closing in. But as they reached the surface, Lyra looked back one last time. The glowing sphere in the chamber pulsed again, once, twice, then projected a single phrase into the air. The light has awakened. Lyra's heart froze. The world she knew was about to change, and she was the reason why. The desert outside Argenia was nothing like the shining towers of the royal city. Here the sky was red with dust. The wind howled like a dying machine, and the ground was cracked and lifeless. Lyra stood on a rocky hill, her cloak torn, her face streaked with sand and exhaustion. Behind her, the once beautiful capital glowed faintly on the horizon, now only a distant memory. She had left her home, her mother, and everything she knew. She was no longer Princess Lyra of Argenia. She was a fugitive. Aaron walked beside her, his armor scratched and dusty. His eyes scanned the wasteland carefully. We'll rest once we reach the old communication tower, he said. It's abandoned. No sensors, no royal patrols. Lyra nodded silently. She still couldn't believe what had happened. One night ago, she had found something buried under the palace. Something that responded to her blood. Something that called her the Light Reborn. And now, the Queen had declared her dangerous. As they walked, Lyra glanced at the mark glowing faintly on her wrist. It had stopped burning, but she could still feel it, like a heartbeat just under her skin. Every time she tried to ignore it, she heard that same whisper in her mind. Follow the light. The truth waits beyond the walls. Aaron noticed her distant look. You keep hearing it, don't you? Lyra hesitated. You believe me? I've seen stranger things, Aaron said quietly. I served your mother in the Outer Wars. The same kind of energy destroyed whole fleets. She called it forbidden light. Maybe she was trying to protect you from it. Lyra frowned. Or maybe she was trying to control it. They reached the ruins of the communication tower by nightfall. The wind whistled through the broken metal. Inside, shattered screens flickered with ghostly light. Lyra sat on a pile of old cables while Aaron checked their equipment. He handed her a small pack of water and some dry rations. Eat. You'll need your strength. She smiled weakly. You sound like a soldier, not a friend. I was a soldier, he said, sitting beside her. But tonight I'm just someone trying to keep you alive. For a while, neither spoke. The silence of the wasteland was heavy. Only the wind and the soft hum of old machines filled the air. Then suddenly Lyra gasped. The mark on her wrist began to glow again, brighter this time, filling the room with blue light. The broken screens flickered to life. Lines of ancient code scrolled across the monitors. Then a holographic image appeared, a woman with glowing eyes and long silver hair. If you see this message, the hologram said, then the blood of the first queen lives again. The darkness that ended our age is returning. Only the Lightborn can stop it. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The Lightborn? That's me? Before Aaron could answer, the ground outside began to shake. From the shadows beyond the tower, robotic shapes rose, tall, rusted, with red eyes burning like coals. Old war machines, scavenger drones, still active after centuries. Aaron drew his blade. Stay behind me! But the machines moved fast, their arms transforming into plasma rifles. Energy bolts exploded around them. Lyra ducked behind a pillar, fear flooding her chest. She wanted to fight, but her sword was broken. Aaron slashed through one machine, sparks flying. Lyra, use your power, he shouted. I don't know how, she cried back. Another blast hit the wall beside her, throwing her to the ground. Her wrist struck the floor. The mark flared like lightning. A sudden wave of blue energy burst from her body, spreading across the entire room. The light blinded everything for a moment. When it faded, the drones were gone, melted into twisted metal. The desert outside glowed faintly, the sand turning into glass from the heat. Lyra trembled. Did I do that? Aaron stared at her in disbelief. You didn't just fight them, Lyra, you erased them. She looked down at her hands, still glowing softly. For the first time, she didn't feel weak. She felt powerful, and that scared her even more. They stood outside the tower, watching the horizon. Aaron adjusted his comm device, trying to block the royal trackers. After this energy burst, the palace will know you're alive, he said. We'll have to keep moving. Lyra nodded, but her mind was far away. She looked up at the stars again. The same blue one blinked, brighter now, pulsing in sync with her wrist. She whispered, "They'll never stop hunting me." Aaron glanced at her. "Then we'll stop running." Lyra turned to him, confused. "What do you mean?" He met her eyes. "You're not a princess anymore, Lyra. You're something greater. And if the queen calls you a threat, then maybe the only way to save this kingdom is to become exactly what they fear." For a long moment, the wind blew between them, carrying sand and silence. Then, somewhere far in the distance, a faint sound echoed, the roar of ships. Lyra's heart skipped. "They found us." Aaron pulled her cloak tighter. "Then we move, north. There's a place called the Silent Valley. No sensors, no drones. If the legends are true, that's where the warrior queen once trained." As they disappeared into the desert night, the mark on Lyra's wrist glowed brighter, guiding the way through the darkness. Above them, far beyond the clouds, a satellite blinked red. In the capital city, Prince Chiron watched the signal on his screen and smiled coldly. "So," he whispered, "the failure still breathes. Let her run. Every step brings her closer to me." And in the depths of the wasteland, the whisper returned to Lyra's mind, soft, ancient, and full of promise. "You are not running, child. You are rising." The desert sun rose like fire over the horizon, painting the wasteland in shades of gold and blood. Lyra and Aaron walked through the endless dunes, their cloaks fluttering in the wind. Every step felt heavier. They had been running for 2 days, sleeping little, eating less. But it wasn't exhaustion that haunted Lyra. It was the voice. The same soft whisper in her head that came and went like the wind. "Your light can heal. Or destroy. Choose wisely." Lyra tried to ignore it, but each time she did, the mark on her wrist glowed faintly, as if reminding her that her destiny was no longer hers to escape. Aaron stopped suddenly and knelt beside a set of tracks in the sand. "Someone's been here," he muttered. "A large group. Too organized to be scavengers. Royal soldiers?" Lyra asked, her heart tightening. "Maybe," he replied, scanning the horizon with his visor. "Or worse, bounty hunters. Chiron must have placed a price on your head by now." Lyra swallowed hard. "Then we can't stay here." They continued north until the dunes gave way to jagged cliffs and rocky plains. The air shimmered with heat, and the sound of buzzing machines echoed faintly in the distance. Aaron found a narrow path leading into a canyon, hidden from above. "We'll rest here for a while," he said. As Lyra sat against the stone wall, she noticed strange markings carved into the rocks, symbols similar to the one on her wrist. She traced her fingers over them, and the carvings began to glow softly. Aaron turned quickly. "Lyra, what did you do?" "I don't know," she whispered. "It just reacted to me." Before they could move, a low rumble shook the canyon. The ground split open, revealing a hidden chamber below. A voice, deep and metallic, echoed from the darkness. "Access confirmed. Bloodline recognized. Welcome, child of light." A beam of blue light shot upward, pulling Lyra gently toward the opening. Aaron grabbed her arm. "Wait, it could be a trap." Lyra looked down at him and smiled faintly. "Everything's been a trap since the day I was born." The light pulled her inside, and Aaron followed. They landed in a vast underground chamber filled with glowing crystals and floating machines. In the center stood a massive robotic figure half buried in dust and cables. Its eyes flickered weakly. Lyra stepped closer. "Who are you?" The machine's voice echoed through the room. "Designation, Seraph 7, Guardian of the First Queen's Vault. My duty, to test the next bearer of the light." Aaron raised his weapon. "We're not here for tests. We're just trying to survive." The robot ignored him. Its eyes turned toward Lyra. "You carry the Queen's mark, but power without purpose leads to ruin. To awaken your true strength, you must face the reflection of your soul. Before Lyra could speak, the chamber darkened. She found herself standing in an endless void, surrounded by mirrors made of light. In each reflection, she saw herself, but different. One version held a sword dripping with blood. Another wore a crown of flame. Another was kneeling in chains, weeping. A voice in her own whispered from everywhere and nowhere. You think you can lead them? You couldn't even save yourself. Lyra clenched her fists. I'm not that girl anymore. You're a failure, the voice hissed. A shadow of your mother. Maybe, Lyra said softly, her eyes burning with tears. But even a shadow can hide a spark. She raised her hand and light burst from her wrist. The mirrors shattered one by one until the void collapsed into white. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the chamber. Seraph's voice rumbled again. Test complete. The spark has survived the darkness. The Lightborn awakens. Aaron helped her stand, his expression a mix of awe and worry. What happened? I faced myself, Lyra said quietly. And I won. The robot extended one massive arm, revealing an ancient sword, its blade glowing like starlight. Take this, child of light, the sword of Argenia. It was meant for the one who would bring balance to the crown. Lyra took the sword carefully. The moment her hand touched the hilt, the mark on her wrist merged with the blade's energy. The sword hummed, alive, responding to her heartbeat. But before she could speak, Seraph's eyes flashed red. Warning. External threat detected. The walls shook. Explosions echoed above. Aaron looked toward the exit. They found us! Through the cracks in the ceiling, flashes of gunfire lit up the chamber. Dozens of soldiers descended from drop pods, black armor, royal insignias. At their center stood Prince Kairon, smiling cruelly. Hello, cousin, he said through his helmet speaker. The queen sends her love, but I'm afraid she wants her little secret back. Aaron stepped in front of Lyra, weapon ready. You'll have to go through me, Kairon chuckled. Gladly, the soldiers opened fire. Energy bolts rained down as Aaron and Lyra dove for cover. The chamber filled with smoke and flashing lights. Seraph's voice boomed through the chaos. Protect the Lightborn. Lyra's heart raced. The sword pulsed in her hand, calling to her. She raised it high, and a wave of blue light exploded outward, knocking the soldiers back. Kairon shielded his face, his armor cracking from the force. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. The soldiers were unconscious. Aaron was breathing hard but alive. Lyra stood tall, her eyes glowing faintly. Kairon staggered to his feet, his smirk gone. You're stronger than I expected, he said. Good. That'll make breaking you even sweeter. He activated his plasma blade, its red light reflecting in his eyes. This isn't over, cousin. Then in a flash of teleportation energy, he vanished. Lyra lowered her sword, shaking. The air still hummed with her power. Aaron looked at her and whispered, You just fought the Queen's army and lived. Lyra stared at the sword, then at the ceiling where Kairon had disappeared. No, she said softly. I didn't just live. I was born. Above them, thunder rolled across the desert sky. Far away, the Queen watched the same storm from her tower and whispered to herself. So, the light returns. The desert winds had grown colder since the battle beneath the canyon. For 3 nights, Lyra and Aaron had traveled north, guided by the strange glow of her new sword. The blade shimmered even in darkness, as if pointing the way forward. Every few hours, the mark on Lyra's wrist would pulse, soft, steady, alive, pulling them toward something she couldn't yet see. They climbed over cliffs, crossed dried riverbeds, and walked through plains of blackened glass where old battles had once burned the land. The silence was heavy here, almost sacred. Aaron adjusted his pack as they reached the top of a ridge. We're close, he said, studying the scanner on his wrist. There's an energy reading ahead, strong, old, and buried deep. Lyra looked down at the vast valley below. It was filled with broken towers half buried in sand, the remains of a lost city. At the center stood a huge circular structure, glowing faintly beneath layers of dust and time. Argenia Prime, she whispered. The first kingdom, Aaron nodded. Before your mother's empire. This was where it all began. They descended into the ruins carefully. The air was thick with the smell of iron and dust. Strange machines lay scattered. Old war mechs, rusted and silent. Lyra touched one of the fallen machines, brushing the sand from its surface. The metal beneath was engraved with symbols like the ones on her sword. This place feels alive, she said quietly. It should be dead, Aaron replied. But somehow it isn't. Inside the central structure, they found a massive chamber filled with thousands of empty suits of armor standing upright, perfectly still. Each one was humanoid, tall, elegant, made of silver and crystal, as if frozen in time. Their eyes were dark, their weapons resting beside them. Lyra stepped forward slowly. What are they? Aaron's voice lowered. The Queen's army, the Warriors of Light. Legends say they were sealed after the First War, when the power of light almost destroyed the world. Lyra's heartbeat quickened. The mark on her wrist began to shine, lighting the room with a soft blue glow. The air trembled. The silent armor began to hum, faintly at first, then louder, vibrating like an awakening storm. Lyra, Aaron warned, stepping back. You're triggering something. I can feel them, she whispered. They're waiting. She raised her sword and the mark on her wrist flared bright. The energy spread like lightning across the floor, forming a glowing pattern that connected every armored warrior. The room shook. Dust fell from the ceiling as a deep hum filled the chamber. One by one, the eyes of the statues began to glow with white light. Then they moved. The first of the warriors stepped forward, its armor shining, its blade igniting with energy. The others followed, their movements smooth, disciplined, almost human. The chamber filled with the sound of awakening metal and echoing voices. A voice deep and ancient spoke from everywhere at once. The bloodline returns. The Lightborn has called us. We serve. Aaron stared in disbelief. You just woke an army. Lyra looked around, awe and fear mixing in her chest. I didn't mean to. You were meant to, the voice interrupted. From the shadows stepped a figure, not human, not machine, but something in between. A tall armored being with silver hair and golden eyes. Its armor was engraved with the same markings as Lyra's sword. Who are you? She asked. I am Seraphion, commander of the Lost Army, it said, kneeling before her. We were sealed to await the return of the Queen's true heir. You carry her light. Command us and we will rise again. Lyra shook her head. I'm not ready to command anyone. I barely understand this power. Seraphion's gaze was steady. Understanding comes after belief. The darkness your mother fought has returned, and the Queen's own throne is now corrupted. Aaron stepped forward. Corrupted how? The Queen no longer guards the light, Seraphion said. She bends it to her will. If she continues, the balance will break and all of Argenia will fall. The words struck Lyra like a blade. She remembered her mother's cold eyes during the trial, her silence, her control. She already began, she whispered, and I was too blind to see it. Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder. Then maybe this is your chance to fix it. For a moment, the chamber glowed softly. Thousands of warriors standing at attention, their armor reflecting Lyra's light. It was a sight of impossible beauty, like stars reborn in darkness. But above them, danger stirred. High in the orbiting satellite, a red alert flared on Prince Chiron's console. The system had detected a massive energy spike in the wastelands. He smiled darkly. So the little flame has found her army. Perfect. He turned to his soldiers. Prepare the orbital cannons. Let's see how long her light can survive the fire. Back in the ruins, the newly awakened soldiers looked to Lyra, waiting for her command. The mark on her wrist burned hotter, her connection to them growing stronger with every breath. Aaron looked up suddenly. Lyra, the sky. She followed his gaze. The horizon was glowing red, not from sunset but from descending fire. The sound of the heavens breaking filled the air. Chiron's voice came through the communicator in her cloak, cruel and mocking. Run, cousin. Or burn with your ghosts. Lyra gripped her sword tightly. The light along the blade pulsed in rhythm with her heart. She turned to Aaron and the awakened army. We're not running anymore. She raised her sword toward the burning sky. Argenia will not fall to fire again. The army raised their blades as one, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The first explosion hit, fire raining from the heavens. Lyra's eyes glowed bright blue as she shouted, Shield the light! The valley erupted with energy, a dome of pure light rising around the ruins, holding back the storm. The blast struck, thunder roared, and yet the light did not break. When the smoke cleared, the ancient army stood untouched. And in the center, Lyra stood tall, her sword still raised, her eyes blazing with power. Aaron looked at her in awe. You just stopped an orbital strike. Lyra lowered her sword slowly. No, she said softly, staring at the burning horizon. That was only the beginning. The ruins of Argenia Prime still glowed faintly under the stars. The air was heavy with smoke from the orbital attack that Lyra's light had stopped. The ancient army stood like statues, their armor shining dimly, waiting for her command. Lyra sat near the edge of a fallen pillar, her sword resting across her knees, eyes fixed on the night sky. She could still feel her mother's presence, distant but sharp, like a blade that had once protected her, now turned against her. The queen knew she had survived. The queen knew she had awakened the army, and soon she would strike again. Aaron approached quietly, a data tablet in his hand. "We intercepted a royal signal," he said, his voice low. "It's from the palace. Your mother is preparing a global broadcast." Lyra looked up. "A message for the people?" Aaron nodded. "She's going to call you a traitor, blame you for the attack. She'll make the world fear you before they can follow you." Lyra's chest tightened. She always wins with silence. And lies. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then maybe it's time you speak." Before she could answer, the air around them shimmered. A projection appeared, the queen herself, tall and regal, her eyes as cold as the throne she sat upon. The soldiers immediately raised their weapons, but Lyra motioned them to lower them. "Daughter," the queen's voice echoed, clear and calm. "So it's true. You live." Lyra stood slowly. "You knew I would." The queen's eyes narrowed. "You've awakened forbidden power. You've broken royal law and disturbed the balance that keeps this world from burning. Do you even understand what you've done?" "I saved lives," Lyra shouted. "Your attack would have destroyed half the wastelands." "I was cleansing a threat," the queen replied coolly. "You, Lyra, are that threat." The words hit harder than any weapon. Lyra felt her hands tremble. "I was your daughter, your heir. Everything I've done, and it was because you turned your back on me." The queen's image leaned forward slightly. "I turned away because you were weak. I see now that I was wrong. You are dangerous." Silence filled the ruins. Even the wind seemed to stop. Lyra's eyes burned with tears that refused to fall. "Then so be it," she said softly. "If being dangerous means standing against your cruelty, I'll wear that title proudly." The queen's projection flickered, her voice cutting sharper now. "You think your light is pure? That power destroyed our ancestors. It will destroy you too. Come home, Lyra. Surrender. I will contain the light before it consumes you, as it did them." Lyra stepped closer to the projection. "You're wrong. The light doesn't destroy. It obeys the heart that wields it. And my heart is not like yours." The queen's expression turned icy. "Then your fate is sealed." The transmission cut off. For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. The glow of her sword reflected in her eyes, cold fire meeting rising tears. Aaron knelt beside her, his voice quiet. "You don't have to fight her, Lyra." She looked at him, her voice breaking slightly. "She's not giving me a choice." Above them, the sky darkened again. A fleet of royal ships moved in formation, black silhouettes against the stars. The hum of engines echoed through the valley like thunder. Aaron activated his comms. "They're deploying ground forces. We're outnumbered." Lyra turned to Seraphian, the commander of the lost army. "Can we fight them?" "We can hold them," he said. "But the queen's forces are endless. The palace feeds them with the energy of the light you now carry. To end this, you must cut off her source." "The source?" "The throne," Lyra whispered. "It's powered by the same energy. She's using the light to control everyone." Aaron looked at her. "Then we take the fight to the palace." The plan formed quickly. Seraphion's army would create a diversion, drawing the royal fleets into the desert, while Lyra and Aaron infiltrated the palace through the old underground tunnels beneath the capital. Before they left, Seraphion bowed deeply. "If we fall, our light will burn as long as yours lives." Lyra nodded, gripping his arm. "We will not fail." Hours later, under the cover of storm clouds, Lyra and Aaron rode through the desert on stolen hoverbikes. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the chaos above. The ancient army clashing with the queen's forces in waves of light and fire. The ground trembled beneath their speed. As they neared the city, Lyra could see the great dome of the royal palace glowing crimson. The throne's power was pulsing stronger than ever, feeding off her mother's rage. They entered the tunnels, the same ones she had escaped through days ago. The walls vibrated with energy, whispering faintly in her ears. "The light chooses balance, not chains." Aaron looked at her. Once we enter, there's no turning back. Lyra smiled faintly. I stopped running the day I picked up this sword. When they emerged inside the palace, alarms blared instantly. Guards flooded the corridors, but Lyra's light cut through them like a storm. With every strike of her sword, her power grew, not wild or angry, but focused, calm, and alive. They reached the throne room, massive, silent, glowing red. At the center stood Queen Seraphine, surrounded by floating crystals of light feeding into her armor. She turned slowly, her face a mask of cold beauty and sorrow. "Welcome home, my daughter," she said. Lyra stepped forward, sword blazing. "This isn't home anymore." Their eyes met, two mirrors of the same power, divided by pain. "You'll destroy everything," the queen whispered. "Then I'll start with the lies," Lyra replied, raising her blade. The room exploded with light as mother and daughter clashed, gold against blue, fire against thunder. The throne trembled. The palace walls cracked. The fate of Argenia hung in the balance, and as the storm of light swallowed the sky outside, the people below looked up in awe and fear. Some whispered prayers. Others whispered hope. "The queen's daughter has returned," one said. "No," another whispered. "The warrior queen rises." The throne room shook with thunder and blinding light. Sparks of energy burst through the air as Lyra and Queen Seraphine clashed again and again, their swords colliding like stars colliding in the night. Every strike echoed through the palace, tearing apart the marble floor and shattering the golden pillars. Lyra's blue aura flared around her like a storm, while the queen's golden light burned steady and fierce. The two forces, mother and daughter, light and control, danced in chaos, neither giving in. "Why can't you see?" the queen shouted, her blade slashing through the air. "The light must be ruled. Without order, it destroys." Lyra blocked her strike, her eyes blazing with fire. "You don't rule the light, you cage it. That's why it's dying." Their blades met again, sending shockwaves across the room. The energy cracked the ceiling, letting the storm outside pour through. Rain and lightning mixed with the glowing dust of the palace. In the shadows of the battlefield, Aaron fought his way through the guards. His armor was damaged, his breathing heavy, but he never stopped. He knew the real fight wasn't his to win, it was Lyra's. All he could do was buy her time. Lyra stumbled as a golden blast threw her back across the hall. The queen walked toward her slowly, her face cold, her armor glowing brighter. "You were my greatest hope," she said softly, "but you became my greatest danger." Lyra struggled to her feet. "Maybe I was never meant to be your shadow." The queen raised her sword high. "Then you will be erased." But as she swung, Lyra caught the blade in her bare hand. Blue light flared between their grips, exploding like a sun. The force sent both of them flying in opposite directions. When the dust cleared, Lyra stood slowly, the mark on her wrist glowing like fire. Her voice trembled, but it was full of power. "You taught me strength through fear. Now I'll show you strength through faith." She pressed her palm against the ground. The light spread from her like a pulse, through the marble, through the walls, through the entire palace. Outside across the battlefield, the ancient army of Argenia felt it. Their armor ignited once more, brighter than ever. Seraphion raised his blade to the sky. "The Lightborn calls!" The soldiers of the lost army roared as their energy shields expanded, pushing back the queen's fleet. In the clouds above, royal ships began to fall, torn apart by the sheer force of the awakening light. Back inside the throne room, the queen staggered, her armor flickering. "What are you doing?" Lyra's voice was calm now, almost serene. "I'm freeing what you tried to control." The energy around her sword grew, turning from blue to white, pure and blinding. Her hair floated in the air, her eyes glowing brighter than any flame. For the first time, even the queen hesitated. Aaron stumbled into the hall, blood on his face. "Lyra, stop! You'll burn yourself out." She turned and smiled faintly. Maybe that's what light is meant to do, shine until the darkness breaks. She raised her sword one final time. The palace trembled. The mark on her wrist extended up her arm, across her neck, covering her in glowing veins of light. The ancient whisper returned, clear, gentle, and full of power. "Rise, child of the first light. Become what you were born to be." Lyra's body lifted from the ground, surrounded by a halo of energy. The sword in her hand split into beams of pure light, forming wings behind her, vast and radiant. The entire city below saw it, gasping as the storm clouds parted. The queen fell to her knees, shielding her eyes. "Lyra, what have you become?" Lyra's voice echoed like thunder and wind. Not your heir. Not your failure. I am the light you tried to bury. She struck her sword into the ground. The explosion was silent at first, a wave of white light spreading in every direction. The golden armor of the queen shattered. The palace throne cracked, its power core dissolving into dust. The storm outside faded. The fire stopped. The world went still. When the light cleared, Lyra stood in the middle of the ruined throne room, her sword dim but alive. The queen lay on the ground, her armor broken. She opened her eyes weakly. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice full of exhaustion and regret. You saved them." Lyra knelt beside her mother, tears finally falling. "No, we did." The queen smiled faintly, a small, real smile, one Lyra had never seen before. "You were never a failure." Then her eyes closed and the last of her golden light faded away. Aaron stepped forward, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "It's over."
Lyra shook her head softly, looking out through the shattered walls. The dawn was breaking over Arginia, sunlight touching the ruined city with warmth and color for the first time in years. "It's not over," she said quietly. "It's just beginning." Outside, the people gathered below the palace, staring at the light spreading through the sky. Someone whispered, "The queen is gone." Another voice answered, full of awe, "No, the queen has returned." Lyra stepped out onto the palace balcony, her armor glowing faintly in the morning sun. The people fell silent. The ancient army knelt in unison, their blades lowered in respect. Aaron bowed beside her. "What will you do now?" Lyra looked out over the horizon, the same direction from which the first light of day came. "I'll rebuild," she said softly. "Not a kingdom of control, but of balance. No more shadows, no more fear." A breeze carried her words through the city like a promise. "Long live the warrior queen," someone shouted from below. And soon, thousands of voices joined, the chant growing louder until it filled the air, rolling like thunder across the land. "Long live the warrior queen! Long live the light!" Lyra raised her sword one last time toward the rising sun. It shone bright, catching the dawn's first rays. For a moment, the light seemed endless. Not a weapon, not a curse, but a gift. And somewhere deep beneath the ruins, a soft hum answered her call. The same ancient energy, now at peace. But far beyond the stars, in the void of space, an unknown ship stirred. A red light blinked to life, and a cold, mechanical voice whispered, "Subject Lyra 01 confirmed. Phase 2, initiated." The screen faded to black. End of Season 1. The Warrior Queen.